Welcome back. In this next part, we're going to discuss hypercholesterolemia. Now, in the previous video, I stated that hypercholesterolemia means having a too high blood cholesterol concentration. Now, in order to properly define that then, we need to know what is the normal range for blood cholesterol concentration, and that's what we're going to begin this video with a discussion of. So, the normal range then for total cholesterol concentration within the blood is between 3 and 5 millimolar. And I apologise if you're in a country that uses different units, but these are the units that we use here in the UK, millimolar, for total cholesterol concentration. So what does this actually mean? What does it mean, total cholesterol concentration? Well, we know that cholesterol within the bloodstream is stored within lipoproteins. And we know that there are loads of different types of lipoproteins, and we've been over some of the main ones in the previous video. Total cholesterol concentration, the idea of it is that you take all of the cholesterol out of all of the different types of lipoproteins and work out the total concentration. So it's reasonably common sense. It's not the cholesterol concentration that's cholesterol within a specific type of lipoprotein. It includes all the different lipoproteins. So if you were working this out, you'd take a certain volume of blood and you'd work out how much cholesterol is in all of the different lipoproteins. So you take every single one of the lipoprotein molecules and take every last molecule of cholesterol out, count it all up, and then say that there's that much cholesterol in that volume of blood, and you'd then have the total cholesterol concentration of the blood. So, total cholesterol concentration, the normal range of that is between 3 and 5 millimoles of cholesterol per litre. Now, biomedical scientists are actually cleverer than that, however. They can actually work out what the concentration of cholesterol in different types of lipoprotein is. So instead of taking cholesterol from every single type of lipoprotein and adding it all up to make a concentration, instead they can say, let's just take the cholesterol from, let's say, LDL, add all of that up and work out what is the concentration of LDL cholesterol within the bloodstream. And I'm going to give you those ranges as well. So we can actually work out what is the concentration of LDL cholesterol within the bloodstream. And the normal range for that is between 1.5 and 3 millimolar. So you can see, therefore, that most of the cholesterol that is within the blood is actually LDL cholesterol. This is going to make up a large majority of this, a large fraction of this. Now, let's also go over what is the normal range for HDL cholesterol within the blood. And by the way, something that I didn't mention in the previous video, when you read articles about cholesterol in the news, in a newspaper for instance, they often talk about LDL and HDL, and they often call LDL bad cholesterol and HDL good cholesterol. So if you're just wondering how LDL and HDL match up to good cholesterol, bad cholesterol that you might have seen in the newspaper, that's what they actually mean when they use those terms. Good cholesterol is cholesterol that's within HDL molecules, i.e. cholesterol that is going back to the liver, and bad cholesterol is cholesterol in the LDL molecules, that is cholesterol going from the liver to the peripheral tissues. Although, as I said in the previous video, cholesterol is massively demonized. It is actually essential for life, and therefore it's kind of wrong to call LDL cholesterol bad cholesterol, because that is essential. It's essential for LDL to take cholesterol to the peripheral tissues. However, we'll come on to why the news is so adamant about calling LDL bad cholesterol in just a moment when we discuss the consequences of hypercholesterolemia. Anyway, back to the normal range for HDL cholesterol. It is between 1 and 1.5 millimolar. So you usually have a lower concentration of HDL cholesterol compared to LDL cholesterol. So, those are the normal ranges then. In terms of the definition of hypercholesterolemia, we don't define it in terms of the specifics. We don't define it in terms of too high LDL cholesterol concentration. We just define it in terms of total cholesterol concentration. So the definition then of hypercholesterolemia is total cholesterol concentration that is higher than the upper limit of normal, so above 5 would be the cutoff between normal and abnormal. Of course, if it's just above 5, then that's not too worrying. If you're getting more onto a level like 6, that is definitely hypercholesterolemia. That's starting to get to a worrying level now. Okay, we'll come back to talking about ranges later when we talk about idiopathic versus familial. The next part that I want to discuss is consequences of hypercholesterolemia. Why do we actually get fussed about what our blood cholesterol level is? Oh, and actually before I do that, I've missed off a key point. So I've said, therefore, that when we say hypercholesterolemia, we mean that your total cholesterol concentration is above the upper limit of normal, so it's above 5. And a normal sort of hypercholesterolemic level, the archetypal example would be a total cholesterol concentration of 6. That is the normal one that I see in people who are hypercholesterolemic. It's a classic number. And even though we define hypercholesterolemia according to total cholesterol concentration, the actual cholesterol that is too high in people with hypercholesterolemia is not the HDL cholesterol. It's not cholesterol in the chylomicrons. It's not cholesterol in any of the other lipoproteins. It is cholesterol in the LDL. So I'll say that again to make it absolutely clear. When people have hypercholesterolemia and their total cholesterol concentration is too high, the reason for that is that the concentration of LDL cholesterol has increased. So they have too much LDL in their blood. And this is beginning to start explaining why the mainstream media call LDL bad cholesterol, because it's the one that goes too high in hypercholesterolemia. So in actual fact, we could, if we wanted to, call hypercholesterolemia hyper-LDL cholesterolemia, but that doesn't sound as good, so we just say hypercholesterolemia. But be aware that the reason that people have too high cholesterol in hypercholesterolemia is not because the HDL is too high, it's not because the chylomicrons are too high, it's because their LDL cholesterol is too high. So, if you were to measure total cholesterol and find it too high, and you then were to actually do the more advanced test and find out what their LDL level is, you would find that their LDL level would be higher than this upper limit here, and it would be accounting for why the total cholesterol is too high. So their HDL may be perfectly normal, but their LDL would be above the upper limit, and it would be what's causing the total cholesterol to be too high. Right, so let's now come on to consequences of having hypercholesterolemia or too high LDL, and this is where we get to use our pictures here. But first, I want to talk actually about the most important consequence, because these pictures may be very interesting, but these actually aren't particularly important consequences of hypercholesterolemia. The really important consequence, which I'm going to write over here, is atherosclerosis, disease of the arteries. So if you don't know what atherosclerosis is, this is the disease that now it's estimated will kill 50% of people living in the Western world. Atherosclerosis is disease of large arterial blood vessels. It is the disease where cholesterol deposits build up in the walls of the blood vessels, and these plaques, these cholesterol deposits, plaques is the name for these cholesterol deposits, impinge in on the lumen of the blood vessel and therefore narrow the lumen of the blood vessel, which means less blood can flow through that blood vessel, and therefore less blood is going to be perfusing the tissue that is supplied by that blood vessel. So, having too high cholesterol is a massive risk factor for developing atherosclerosis. There are other risk factors as well. Smoking is another risk factor. Being overweight is another risk factor. Having high blood pressure is another risk factor. But having high cholesterol is one of the massive risk factors, along with those other ones, that can lead to accelerated atherosclerosis.